So the next scene, we had a classic scenario of we were told that we would have 3 players for 10 minutes, and our Russian friend, who I've forgotten his name, Zherkov, sorry. Zherkov didn't turn up. So we had kind of the two stars, but we didn't have Zherkov, as you can see, which led us to fix it in post. We can just leave the camera rig set up, create a hot set, leave it and put him in later. The added joy that we had is they had to move the camera rig. So traditionally, you'd probably think it would kind of be all right. And so this was we had to kind of bite our lip and hope it would work out. And also we had to replace in the back of the, where the green panels are that you see there, we had to basically put in futuristic workout displays. The idea is that they're on a spaceship. In a futuristic training ground. I'm not sure if that comes across, but I think it kind of works. So essentially we had to replace all the backgrounds. So we had keying, roto, paint, and cleanup work, which I believe we achieved quite successfully. The main problem that we also had is that there was a slight, because we had things in our set, as Adam spoke about, we worked with Russell, the art director, quite extensively. And what Samsung wanted was a lot of geometric shapes actually in the art direction, so they'd have a lot of straight lines, which for us was good because we could see where the horizontal and vertical misalignment was because it was right in front of us. But the other problem that we slightly had was we shot this on the F23? On the F23. We had identical lenses and everything, but we were getting kind of a lot of bending in the lenses at the edge of the frame, so we had to do a lot of correction on that. And then also they wanted depth actually within the screens. And this scene is good to look at because what it shows you is we had to create this UI interface which Drogba is interacting with that had to come out of the screen. They wanted Drogba to sit on the screen plane, and then they wanted there to be stereo depth in the screens at the back. So we had to do kind of stereo within stereo quite a few times in this job as well, which was also something that when you have the pre-production meeting, it all seems quite straightforward. A few football players, few CG footballs, but then when they actually were looking at this, they were very, very keen that we added stereo depth into the monitors at the back. So we'd have to create a stereo composite and then put it into a stereo composite and then make that feel comfortable to look at. And a lot of this was decided in the online phase of the job as well. So for us, it was interesting because some of this work had been previously done on Avatar. I'm sure we're familiar with it. There was a lot of CG interfaces in Avatar, which was actually something that was really good, and we spoke to the title design team that did that, and they kind of said, just do what feels comfortable. And that's just another point that I wanted to make, that a lot of the stuff that we found as compositors working in stereoscopic space, we're very often used to creating things in Z space, things that go away from the camera to recreate a 3D world. And a lot of that knowledge from working in a kind of a 2D, 3D environment serves very well. And it wasn't so much of I think a lot of stereo compositing is sometimes is a bit of a black art, but your brain tells you when it's right, and your brain tells you when it feels good. And we had great fun building these. Okay, so this was another thing that came up because Zherkov couldn't make it up. The chap on the right is actually a stand-in, and we had to replace his head. So we had a head replacement shot to do, which put the fear of God into me. In stereoscopic space, because you can imagine doing a traditional head replacement, projecting onto a CG geometry, or just cutting a head out and putting it on someone else. And then he runs off as well, so that kind of added some fun. But luckily we achieved that, and we managed to get the head in. This JPEG doesn't do it justice, but we managed to replace his head there. So again, like I was saying, the paint work on the floor I thought was something that would be quite straightforward to do, and the head replacement was something that I thought would be almost impossible to do, but it almost became the other way around. So, that worked really well. And also the set extension, if you look here, they wanted to extend the top of the set. They felt the set was a little bit low, so we managed to extend the set up either side with some basic CG geometry. And that worked really well, and the camera was moving, and we had to do a lot of kind of 3D tracking and offset tracking, and it all worked incredibly well. Just a quick point of case, we don't have any proprietary stereoscopic software at Envy. We were using Autodesk Smoke and Flame and Nuke, predominantly Autodesk Nuke and Flame that just had its stereoscopic toolset released. We used Nuke, but we found that a lot of the artifacts that were generated out of Ocular One, which was what was being used at the time, was actually quite prohibitive on what we had. We were shooting on the F23, as we mentioned, and the F23 is incredibly noisy when you shoot at 50 frames per second. So we had a lot of noise to deal with as well, and we were finding that when we were trying to do alignments and when we were creating doing a lot of the offset stuff that Ocular offers you, that the noise was actually causing us a lot of trouble. So we had to kind of go back to basics and use a lot of kind of old school techniques for paint and cleanup work. Just quickly to talk you through that, what we predominantly did was we would track the left eye and do all the rotoscoping and keying on the left eye. We would work out what the offset was to the right eye, and then we would do that. So we wouldn't do 2 sets of rotoscoping and keying. We would just use an offset, because we found that what that led to was kind of less edging and less problems with the keying and the roto. And then the other thing I just wanted to briefly talk about on Bear Grylls was all green screen with full CGI, which was kind of the dynamic opposite of this, because once you go into a 3D CGI world, the convergence and the stereoscopic world is a lot easier to kind of see and to work through, whereas if it's been recorded to tape, that's what you've got. So that's what you have to work with, and that's what you have to fix. But we found working in a full CGI environment slightly easier to work with, but we had the added excitement in that job of having a lot of volumetric fog and a lot of volumetrics in that, which was again something that we'd been warned about, lens flares, volumetric lighting, and especially things that cause polarization in the eyes that can become very distracting when you're watching stereoscopic work. But we found that we managed to deal with that quite well in the Bear Grylls one. The other thing that I do want to talk about that caused quite an issue, which I think if I go back this way, is what you get a lot in shooting through a mirror rig is you get polarization in one of the eyes. Essentially, on all black surfaces, one is slightly shinier than the other, and that basically causes a thing in your eye, and it kind of looks like someone's flickering a light kind of off a watch in your eye when you're watching it, and it's quite distracting. So we had to do, Adam spoke about matching the two eyes grade-wise, but also then, once you've aligned it, the other thing that you have to do is you have to go through and fix the polarization issues, because that's the one thing that kind of can catch you out. Once you've kind of fixed the geometry and you're happy with that and the eyes are graded, so you have a beautiful stereo image, then there's always something, and we had that on Bear Grylls because he had a reflective jacket, and so when he would move, it would create the shimmering, which would be quite distracting to look at too. But my general experience with working in short form in stereo, as aside to working in film, is that managing the client's expectations about what they're going to see on the screen and what you can do is, I think we need to be positive towards the clients too, because I think that they can be slightly baffled with what they can actually achieve. A lot of them want to be at the cutting edge. Samsung are at the cutting edge of stereoscopic technology. They produce predominantly a lot of the panels for everyone else's stereoscopic work, and they were learning with us, and that was quite exciting for us that they kind of trusted us with such a flagship piece for them. But yeah, we kind of really enjoyed it.
We did.
And okay, the other quick one point I want to make is about digital acquisition and exhibition format. Both these, the Samsung project was to be shown on television, and the Bear Grylls was shown on Sky 3D and was shown in the cinema. And the main issue that you can have when you're kind of at the hey, here's a script, this is what we want to do, is it's very important to find out where it's actually going to be shown. Because as you can tell by some of that stuff, the 3D effect can be very, very distracting in the cinema compared with at home, and the mode of viewing it as well. I recently went to see a screening of Tron Legacy, and they'd managed to get the eyes the wrong way round. I don't know how they'd done it. I won't name what cinema chain I'd gone to. And I walked in and no one had noticed it. People were taking their glasses off and looking. But I think everyone just thought, oh, maybe this is just what 3D is like. And I spoke to the projectionist, and he was like, oh, yeah, and they restarted the film. And I think that people almost expect 3D to be slightly uncomfortable. So I think one thing that's important for us is to always make sure it is to carry on stereoscopic work. But yeah, thank you.
Daniel, Adam, Marcus, thank you very much for that. The reason you found me... The reason you saw me creeping around behind them is I'm under standing instruction from them to ensure that they leave in what is 5 minutes' time. So if we can have the house lights up, they're up. Okay, is there quick questions anyone would like to ask any of the members of the NV team, please? Yes, gentlemen there. I'm going to take this microphone right over.
Just interested to find out what 3D finishing software, hardware you use.
When you say finishing, we use Autodesk Smoke and Flame predominantly to do the online. We use Nuke, Maya for CG and 2D. We used After Effects for some work using kind of a bit of a proprietary viewing tool. In terms of, is that what you kind of were looking at for finishing or for offline as well?
Well, offline would be
yeah,
interesting
offline
too.
we used Avid. Do we use Media Composer 4?
5.
Media Composer 5. We shot with the Element Technica rig with the F23s to HD Cam SR.
Yeah.
So we went down a tape-based route, which was actually good. But we did,
we did some extensive testing on we had a pre-shoot day and on the timings and the sync, which is why I talked about it at the beginning. And we kept getting tapes back from the shoot, and it was 2 frames out and 1 frame out, and we were doing our best to make sure it was accurate. There was 2 rigs with 4 F23s, and basically they were recording to gen-locked SRs, so 4 SR decks. They didn't have the option of doing dual stream because they wanted to shoot everything at 5994. So it was, double speed basically for all the slow-mo sections. So 4 separate decks, and we tried our best to get them synced, but we spent a lot of time in post-production syncing afterwards because the sync was not consistently out. It did drift, and this is why, the way you're recording your time code and your pictures at the beginning is very important. It impacts post heavily.
Another point I'd like to make briefly, we were very fortunate to be on the beta program for the Autodesk software. So we actually had access to the stereoscopic toolset before it had even been released. So we actually went through 2 or 3 iterations of beta software during the course of the job. Because as luck would have it, the job had to be done right just before the tools had been released. So we were literally working with Autodesk during the job as well.
So yeah, it was our first stereo job with beta software for a really big client. But that's what we do, and that's as a visual effects artist and a post-production company. Well, they're the jobs that we enjoy taking on.
We do have space for one more question, the lady. Okay. I'll bring the microphone over again to you.
I'm just wondering what you see as the future for 3D now.
You go first. Okay. To be honest, I think the future of 3D. A lot of people say to me, glassesless televisions. Oh, that's the only time I'll ever watch it. From what I hear, that's I think what the audience want. But in terms of what we're doing, I just think things that are nice to look at and things that take you on a journey is what's important about this medium. I think like anything that is involved in television or in cinema, it has to be about the story. And I think the future is filmmakers using it for what it should be. I'll probably be shot for saying this, but one of the best 3D films that I've seen is Jackass, because I think what it actually does is it takes you into their world and you really enjoy what they're doing, and it takes you on an experience. And the other thing that was really good was seeing Tron Legacy, and that the stereoscopic effect in that was actually quite minimal, and it was really enjoyable to look at. And the same with Up as well. It's kind of a window into a world, and not a lot of these things coming out towards you, which I think is still a gimmick that's left over from the 50s. So I think the future is people using it as a tool for their storytelling. And I'm really excited to see what Martin Scorsese is going to do with it, because I hear that the story is really fitting with that. And that I think is, for me, the next film I'd really like to see. A master storyteller using a new piece of technology. Sorry.
Just like to follow on from what Marcus was saying there. I think as time goes on, as people start to use the media in a more subtle way, I think 3D used subtly, I've seen certain 3D programming in genres that I would never have thought in a million years would work well in stereoscopic. One example, bizarrely, being a cooking program that I saw as I think it was something that was being made for the Sky 3D channel. And there was an audience there, and I have to say, beforehand, I thought, well, does a cooking program really need to be in 3D? And I sat there and watched the audience, and they were all absolutely mesmerized and watching this thing, and half of them looked like they were about to eat the place afterwards. So I think it's going to be a voyage of discovery. One point I wanted to make briefly, we've spent the best part of 80 to 100 years refining the 2D storytelling process, as using 2D storytelling techniques to create an illusion that draws us into a normal film or a television program. We are at the beginning of the learning curve on learning to use 3D in that environment, and I think that's where the future of it lies.
I think that's the note to begin. Again, can you join me in thanking the team from Envy for a really interesting presentation?